Welcome back to the Art and Yoga and Wellness Podcast, you guys. In today's video, I am going to be having a conversation with you about alcohol and dry January. We're going to talk about my dry January that I'm doing right now, my why. We're going to talk about a little bit of my past experience with alcohol, some of my current revelations about alcohol, and just my overall wellness. I'm going to reference a couple of experts that are way smarter than me that have done the deep dive in all of the facts and science and literature that you need to know if you want the facts about alcohol and what it does to your body. And then we'll wrap up. So head on over to today's video and we'll have a conversation about alcohol and wellness. Welcome back to the Art and Yoga and Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Kira Whitaker. If you guys are watching, so if you're with me on YouTube, you might notice that our lighting is a little off. My background has completely shifted. I'm recording on a Saturday because yesterday we had some storms and my internet was being really wonky and it was loud and it was dark and the wind was bashing rain up against the windows. I could not get the podcast in per deadline. Sorry, Kate and Philip. And so it's afternoon, which I never record in the afternoon. So all of the light is shining really awkwardly and brightly in my face. So I had to shift my desk over. Therefore, my background is our workout area, and it's an absolute train wreck. So things are looking a little different today, but we're going to get through it. And we're going to talk about something that you may or may not want to talk about. I don't know. I feel like this one's a hit or miss, but we're going to talk about alcohol, dry January, and our relationship with alcohol in general. Before I get started, I want to let everyone know that my intention with this podcast is to open up a conversation. That's it. To give you some thought-provoking questions, give you resources. This is not a you should or should not. This is not my opinions. I'll give a little bit of my personal relationship and history with alcohol, what it looks like right now, just so that you know you're talking to a human. I'll reference some, not colleagues, but some professionals in health and wellness and human science that have done really great deep dives in this area that have good takeaways and really, really great updated research on this specific topic and area. And yeah, we'll just have a little chat about it, guys. One thing I do want to say is none of this is a substitute for medical recommendations. I am not your primary care provider. If you have any questions or any concerns about your relationship or intake with alcohol, contact your primary care provider. Also, if this is something that you feel like goes past this conversation, past just a curious conversation with friends, is that if alcohol is something that you are struggling with, or it's something that does not have a place, or it's something that you are really, really struggling to have a balanced and healthy relationship with, reach out to your doctor, reach out to your mental health care provider, reach out to support groups. This does not serve that purpose. This is merely a conversation about things that serve your wellness and things that don't. But I always, always want you to get the support and help you need. If something that I bring up, your needs go deeper and wider than what we're talking about. So I put a poll on Instagram a couple of days ago just saying this was what we were going to talk about on the podcast. Does anybody have any comments, questions, even just giving a little bit of feedback about where your relationship is with alcohol? Right now it's January, 12th? So we're halfway through January. I am doing dry January for reasons that I'll talk about. But over the past year, alcohol has been something that has come up in some of my friendships, just conversations we've had about it. It's something that has come up in the health and wellness space so much over the past few years. Andrew Huberman is one of the people that I was going to mention, so I'll go ahead and do it now. He has done extensive podcasts and conversations about alcohol from a very, very unbiased lens. Just the research, just what the data says. It's not how he feels about it. It's just what it is. Another person who talks about the effects of alcohol in our brains and our cognitive function in depth is Dr. Amen. You can find him online. He's a psychiatrist who is brilliant. He does brain scans with a lot of his patients, which is something that if somebody's going to be diagnosing and specializing in an organ in your body, they should probably look at it. He does. He looks at the brain. So those are a couple of people who I think have just done a brilliant, brilliant job over the past few years of bringing the conversation into mainstream medicine and wellness, and doing their diligence to make sure that all of their information is factual and it's not opinions. So then I've also been on a few podcasts in the past year where I've been asked about alcohol, more from my personal opinions and then also from a wellness standpoint. I was on my friend Allie Reeves' podcast maybe 6 months ago. I don't know. I'll post it on social media when this comes out. And we talked about alcohol and habits and boundaries around it and how to have conversations with your spouse if you're wanting to back off. So there's so many different ways we could talk about alcohol. But what I think I want to do today is just a conversation. It's questions that you can ask yourself to check in with it, to check in with your relationship, your habits with it, the same way I would invite you to check in with every other thing that you're intentional about in your health and wellness routine. If you're intentional about your sleep and your workouts and your nourishment, this is something that is, for a lot of people, has a pretty big part of their social life, their de-stressing habits, their culinary experiences. And those are just some ways that are, not necessarily problematic. Then we have people that maybe have just never really reevaluated their relationship with alcohol and what it looks like post-college or post-high school or whenever you started drinking. And so I think where we can begin is just asking ourselves, have I been intentional about what my relationship with alcohol looks like? This was something that I did last year, and I don't think I ever actually really talked about this because it was something that I was so in the moment with it, and it was something that felt so spiritually led for me. I felt like I just was called to do this, and it felt like something that I needed to do. And then the results of it were so positive. It just reinforced listening, being intuitive about what you needed to do in this season was the right thing to do. And it's probably always the right thing to do. So last year, I decided, this was last spring, I decided to do a fast for Lent. And I was trying to think of things that I could do. I've participated in fasts in the past, but I didn't mean for that to rhyme. But one thing that I have found, I've discovered about myself is I do not fast in any capacity. And I don't mean like in the morning. Sometimes I'll fast for a little bit and delay breakfast. But I mean like a big fast, like we're going down to one meal a day, or we're doing this and this for, Lent or for detox reasons. I don't do that because it can flirt on a really, really fine line of withholding food for me and using that and glorifying it in a way and masking it for like the greater good of my emotional and spiritual growth, when really what it does is it triggers the heck out of me and flirts on a line that feels really, really close to my past eating disorder. So I knew going into Lent last year, I was not going to do any cutting out food. Not doing it. I grew up Catholic. I'm not necessarily a practicing Catholic, but I like to add in a lot of things. There's a lot of layers to my spiritual onion. And so I just wanted to do a traditional Catholic Lent season and fast a bit. And so what I came up with was I was going to abstain from alcohol for 40 days. And the reason for that was to replace the time, the energy around that, and replace that with meditation, with spiritual reflection. It was to bring me closer to God, to quiet any external noises that maybe were cluttering my thoughts, my brain, and to leave an open space for whatever needed to be downloaded during that time. That was the reason I was doing it. And I just felt really pulled to give up alcohol for 40 days. And so I decided to do it. I said it out loud. I talked about it, with a few close friends. That way there was a certain level of accountability. I said it out loud. I said I was going to do it. And I had some reservations and some anxieties about it because we had multiple big social functions coming up. And there's that cultural aspect of it and that social aspect of it, that it goes along with celebration. It goes along with certain, meals and just certain things. And not saying I can't do it. It was just this habit. It was something that I was just used to. And one thing that I learned during that fast was, one, I can be super social and have fun and without having alcohol. It's fine. It's not that big of a deal. The other thing that I noticed was my sleep gets absolutely wrecked if I have alcohol any closer, if it is not cut off. And I don't mean like, guys, I'm not talking about going on a bender. I mean, I'm 37. I've got kids. I got things to do. I'm talking about just a nice dinner and having 2 glasses of red wine spread out throughout a few hours. If I have that at 8:00 and I'm going to bed at 9:30, I will have hot flashes like I am going through menopause 87,000 times in the middle of the night. So that's one thing. My sleep improved. Also, there were just moments where knowing that it wasn't going to be an option created just some mental clarity. I just didn't think about it, and that felt really good. My workouts felt really good. And again, not that I was drinking a lot. It's just over the years, I have noticed that it just doesn't feel good in my body. It just feels, I can have 1 glass of wine or I could have 5 bottles and it feels the same. I get a headache, and my sleep is disrupted. Therefore, I'm groggy the next day. It just doesn't feel that good. I keep referring to wine, by the way, because I'm not a beer or a liquor drinker. So there's that. So I did that last year, and it was not only impactful for the physical things that I felt, meaning those positive physical benefits, but one of the things that I reflected on and that came to me was I have been so intentional. I have been so diligent over the last however many years, 15 years, with every single thing that enters my brain, my body, my spirit. I am so intentional. I have truly put so much effort into designing a wellness routine that directly aligns with my values. I use my strengths to support it. And what I realized was I've never reestablished my opinions, my thoughts, my relationship with alcohol in conjunction with the rest of my wellness routine. I really hadn't sat down and thought about it, how it makes me feel, what it does to my body, anything, since I had really started drinking in my late teens. And if you're listening and if you're like, oh my gosh, Kira, but that wasn't legal, whatever. If you waited till you were 21, I applaud you. I hope that that is what everyone is doing. I grew up in a small town and I started drinking in my teens, guys. So my point here is I had never, as an adult with this designed wellness plan that I have, really thought about it. I think about how certain grains make me feel. I think about my sugar intake. I think about 3 cups of coffee doesn't really make me feel that great, but one's not enough. So I do 2 every morning. I know down to the amount of water that I drink what is okay for me. If I drink this amount, it's too much and my kidney function starts to look weird. If I drink this much, I feel really dry and I don't feel good. I need more. My movement, I know what movements feel good in my body. Y'all know I'm not a runner because it makes my spine feel like crap. I really like the treadmill right now. I am so seasonal and intuitive and respectful of what's working and what's not. And honestly, you guys, until last year, I had never sat down and done an honest inventory about alcohol and where it fits in my life and where it doesn't. And so that's what I want to invite you guys to do. I don't want you to feel like there's judgment or like I have a say in this, because I don't. I just want to invite you to the conversation with yourself, or maybe with your spouse or a close friend or someone that you feel like you have a relationship with, where you can be really honest and you can be really vulnerable and not feel like you're being judged. But I want to say, if you are coming out of the holidays and you're maybe just tired of alcohol, because the holidays for a lot of people have a lot more alcohol involved because we're celebrating and we're social and there's the parties for whatever reason. If you are like me, and I was last year, and you went, I don't have an issue with alcohol. I just know it doesn't feel good in my body anymore. This is something that doesn't feel good. The same way that if some people have dairy, it doesn't feel good in their body because they're a bit lactose. It just wasn't feeling good in my body anymore. And instead of going, but this is part of my social fabric, but this is a part of how I celebrate. This goes really, really good with this certain pasta that I love at this restaurant quarterly. I went, you know what? If this is not making you feel good, then we need to think about it. We need to think about, okay, you cannot have alcohol within 3 hours of when you're going to bed, Kira, because it's going to wreck your sleep and you're going to feel like crap for 2 days. And you are way too busy to be cognitively impaired because you didn't sleep good. Things like that. The other thing that I want to say is, I mentioned, the few doctors in the beginning of this podcast. Dr. Amen is a psychiatrist. He's a medical doctor. Andrew Huberman has a PhD. I don't know what his I don't remember what his maybe neuroscience. He's a practicing professor at Stanford. So he knows his stuff. There's been so much research, you guys, and alcohol really doesn't have any benefits. And if you're one of those people and you're like, Kira, I've looked into the blue zones and a lot of them have wine and they live to be over 100 years old. Okay, fair point, but it's not because of the alcohol. There are so many other contributing factors that are probably helping with their quality of life and helping them with their longevity. Alcohol is one of the very few substances that crosses over and through almost every cell in our body, specifically the blood-brain barrier. It's a neurotoxin. There's a reason that when we overconsume, and everyone's tolerance is different, down to different genetic markers. There are certain blood types that don't metabolize and break alcohol down. So some people might be fine with 1 glass. Some people with 1 glass might go ahead and get a headache and start feeling loopy. So I'm in no way saying there's a certain amount, or we're not doing that, because it's very different for everybody. But what I am saying is it is a neurotoxin. There's a reason why you're not supposed to drive a car after you drink. There is a reason that motor function So slurred speech and trying to put thoughts together sometimes can get a little bit trickier and you feel loopy because it's affecting your brain and your nervous system. And so I want to be very clear that, again, there are things that for some of us feel positive. It can take the edge off if you've got a bit of social anxiety. It goes with certain meals beautifully. There's these social experiences where it's a part of things and celebratory. So I'm not saying that it's all bad, but I am saying from a wellness lens, and as somebody who talks to you every single week about how can you enhance your wellness and how can you look at different things in your life that maybe are not aiding to your wellness and improve those or enhance them. There are not physical benefits to alcohol. The data is very clear. It's out, and there's just not. It increases almost every risk of every type of cancer, ladies, specifically breast cancer. And so if you're somebody who is, again, just wanting to open up a discussion and evaluate as an adult or in this season of life where alcohol's place is, or if you've wanted to back off, or if you've wanted to exchange some of the things in your social life that are typically based around alcohol and you're wanting to be in community with people in different ways, this is just my invitation for you to go, you know what? Somebody else said it. Somebody else brought this forth and it's got my wheels turning. It's given me some words that I had in my head or were in my heart that I was feeling pulled towards, but I didn't myself have. So in conclusion, you guys, I want to say dry January, you can do a dry January anytime. If you're like, Kira, I'm not doing what everybody else is doing. I'm not doing New Year's resolutions. Dry January, it never works for me. It feels like so much pressure. I'm not interested. I'm not saying do dry January. I'm doing dry January just because I needed to get back to podcasting. I was back in the studio. I was back at working with health coaching clients. I wanted to get back into my workouts. I just wanted to set that down and say no to that for a month so I could get back into a routine of saying yes to the other things that are important to me. And I felt like backing off on alcohol and just not drinking for a month in any social setting or any situation at all would just support me to be able to do that with a little bit more ease. But you can always take a break from things, or you can do no different than an elimination diet. If you're like, oh, my gut feels off, I'm going to cut out dairy and gluten for a little bit. You can do the same thing. You can cut something out at any time, or you can even just minimize it. So I'm not saying do dry January. I was just sharing my personal experiences to give you a little bit of a background of my current relationship with alcohol. Something that one of my friends, and she did, I'm not saying names obviously, but we were talking yesterday and she was like, hey, I saw the question box that you put on Instagram and saw that you were going to do a podcast on dry January and just bring up the topic of our relationship with alcohol. She was like, I said I was going to do dry January and it is taking up so much headspace. She was like, all week long, I'm thinking about, am I drinking? Am I not? Am I going to have a cocktail in 3 weeks when we go to that party? And I said, oh my God. And she was like, and I'm just doing it because it feels like I'm supposed to do it. I should be. And y'all know should is so accusatory and it has a shame implication. I don't like using the word should when it comes to our health and wellness and our habits. And she was like, I feel like I should be doing this. And I said, well, let's talk about the reason why you're feeling that way. She was just cutting it out because everybody else was doing it. Just because it seemed like that's what we do. We do dry January. And I said, the reason that you have this resentment towards it and you don't feel pulled to it is because there's no correlation or alignment with your values. There's not a bigger why to support it. It's not sitting on top of a why. Mine was some of my values and the things that are so important to me and my whys are my health and wellness. And I'm in no way saying that these are not some of my friends' values. This was just, I was giving an example of like somebody who I'm close with and is so successful and has a family and loves them well and does all the things, but she was just having a hard time connecting some momentum to this. And so I told her, some of my values are continuing education and self-growth. And there's a lot of stuff that I want to get done in this next quarter, and moving my body and honoring it, because for so long in my earlier years, that was something that I didn't know how to do. I didn't know how to take care of myself and honor my body. So it's important to me that I do that, and I do it consistently and well. Just listed off some of my personal values. And coming out of the holidays, and where I want to be and start 2024 off with, alcohol is not going to support that for me. It does not support or align with my values this month. Okay. So I have a kind of a beefier why that I articulated. I wrote down, I connected to this. And so that's why I think there's a little bit more oomph for dry January for me, versus if you're just like, well, 7 other people are doing it, I guess I'll do it. And then halfway through January, you're like, this is stupid. I just want to go have a margarita. No judgment here. But if you're wanting to reevaluate or look into your relationship with alcohol, or any other habit that you have that just doesn't, that you've got some questions and you've got some stirring over, then I would just encourage you to check in with your values and see if what we're talking about, see if the habit that you feel like you're a bit conflicted with, does that align and support the growth and the implementation of my values in my everyday life? And if I have to say yes to that and no to one of my values, then maybe we dig a little bit deeper and we sift through that. Okay. So that is my conversation with you about alcohol. Like I mentioned in the beginning, you guys, I had no intention to come in with this and, shake my finger in your face and, list all of the data. Other people have done that way better than I could do. And it's stuff that you can easily access online. I just wanted to have an honest and open conversation to bring a little bit of vulnerability and just ease to it, so that you felt like there was a space where you could let your hair down a little bit and think about it without feeling judged, without feeling shame. So if you guys have any questions or even just feedback, please feel free to message me online. If you want to dive deeper into just the literature and just what the data says about alcohol and how it affects our body. Sometimes for me, I need facts over feelings. I don't need the emotions behind things. Sometimes I just need the hard facts so that I can get out of my feelings about things and be a little bit more left brain. Andrew Huberman has an entire 2.5 hour podcast on it, but also clips of the literature and the facts about alcohol and what it does to our body. And I think that's it. And as I mentioned in the beginning, if you or somebody that is ever struggling with substance abuse, please reach out to your primary care provider, reach out for support in your community. There are SA meetings throughout, I think, every city in the United States, as well as Celebrate Recovery at most churches in the United States. So definitely get the support that you need if this is something that you're struggling with, past just the minor and casual habits that I talked about in today's podcast. And with that, you guys, I'm going to let you go. And I will see you in our next episode. Thank you guys. See ya.